So before I talk to you about how to follow the Hebrew calendar, the biblical calendar, whatever you want to call it, I want to tell you why. And you don't have to know why in order to know how to begin following it, but I just feel like it goes to testimony to tell you that it has completely changed my life. That I have no Jewish roots. I am an American Christian woman, and I love Jesus. And while I did grow up in the church, I was a kid when I first got baptized. And of course, there were many years in between that and now that I did not go the way the Lord wanted me to go. And in His mercy, I'm here still. I made it. And I never heard this taught as I was growing up. So I just started discovering things in 2020. But it has forever changed my life and created an ability for me to hear every single month the Lord. And I want to hear the Lord. I have to hear the Lord. Because to walk through, trying to find a better word than the one in my head, to walk through the difficult things that life presents us with, we have got to hear the Lord in order to move forward. So as someone who just has a Christian background, I want to come to you and tell you that this is going to change your life. And even if you have a strong walk with the Lord, or whether you don't even know for sure that you can hear Him, if you will begin to dive in just 1 month at a time, you are going to hear Him in ways you've never heard Him before. There are just cycles that God has for us. And when you think about time as a straight line, it's just not a great way of thinking about it. That's the way we think about it I'm going to speak for the American culture, because that's the one I know. We think about it as being events in the timeline. Oh, well, we've passed this moment, so we're never going to go back to that moment. We're never going to, see that moment again. And then we've got future moments. So when it's all on this line, it's not the biblical way of looking at time. The biblical way of looking at time is when things are a circle. So when you get to a particular month, in that timeline, you are actually in a moment. There's an alignment. When I say that following the Hebrew calendar will keep you in time, it literally will keep you in time because you're following the calendar. But there is an alignment that happens, and a portion that the Lord wants you to receive through all the things that month brings, that is available to receive when you get to that month again. So is God always causing us to advance with Him? Yes. Is hope, joy, all these things available at any time? Yes. But there are special things He wants to bring our attention to, and when we get back to that portion of the cycle, we're able to have another layer of access when we're in alignment with Him, to hear Him over issues we're going through personally and just what He wants to speak to us and bring us through. Because every single year we should be advancing, and that's the cycle of blessing that the Lord has us in. So when we get to this next Hebrew month on the calendar, we're going to be acknowledging certain things and gleaning from certain things that is what this month is about, but yet we're going to hear the Lord in a fresh way, and you're going to receive revelation for what you're walking through, and He is changing you. You are advancing. You are going from this glory to glory to glory. It's just shedding the old, and you've got new coming. And so for me, what that has done, I will end this and begin the teaching now. What that has done for me is to create a space where I'm expectant, I'm hearing, and I'm watching for how the Lord wants to unfold new revelation for me. And whatever I'm going through, all of a sudden gets confirmed, and I begin to hear Him. It's like He doubles down on me for I'm going through something, I'm already processing, I'm hearing Him a little bit, but then I learn what the month is about, and every time I'm like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. Because it's always exactly what I'm going through. It just always is. There is a portion of revelation that is insane that it's so relevant to me in that month. But it always takes me higher and gives me what I need so I can make it through that month, so that I can keep going and keep going up. So for anyone, just go ahead and listen. It's going to change everything for you. I bless you. So today's video is not about a new Hebrew month, but I want to talk to you about the process of what you look at each month and how to get started following God's biblical calendar, because it can be a lot. And I just want to show you how simple it can be. I'm going to share with you why I started following this calendar, exactly how it's changed my life and how it is going to change yours. Whether you are a seasoned Christian with many years under your belt of meeting with the Lord daily in the secret place, and you've got this rich relationship where you hear him constantly, whether you just found out or have never truly heard his voice, or whether you just feel maybe a little bit confused about, am I hearing God? Am I not hearing God? All of that. This is for you, and it will change your life. So I want to share with you the most basic, practical ways to get started with following this calendar, because while it can feel overwhelming, it's very, very simple to get started. And I wanted to just kind of open that gate for you. I've had so many friends ask me, where do you get this information? What are you listening to? How did you get started? How do I follow it? How do I know what day of the month it is? How do I know what month it is? How do I know what that month means? So I am going to share all of those things with you, and in the first minute or two, hopefully I'm going to actually give you the steps you need to begin. So from there on, you can listen to anything you want and just gain more insight and revelation into the process and into what richness this process holds for you, or you can just stop after the next minute and you'll have everything that you need in order to get started with following his calendar. So it's this simple. Let me just tell you what I wrote here. I always write on Substack first, and then I'm kind of sharing that meat with maybe a little bit more personality in my videos. So to make sure I just capture everything, I've got it right here and I'm reading. There's a lot of context about time and calendars and how all of this works, but you don't need to know anything to begin except what day is it and what is today about. It all comes down to that simple. You can take this day by day, month by month. I'll get into the weeds later, but for right now, we just need to figure out what day of the month it is and what that month means for us. So, side note, I will refer throughout this whole video. Sometimes I say biblical calendar, sometimes I say Hebrew calendar. It's just back and forth. It's the same thing. We're looking at a pattern and a timeline that God set up for us biblically in the Bible. It's how his people know how to stay in time with him. And as Constantine got a hold of the early church, everything he did to kind of change how the early church looked into what we ended up with today. We've got different nations here. We have different religions. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, but that's why I kind of go back and forth, because it is the Hebrew calendar. I'm not Jewish. It is for Jewish people. It's for God's people. It's for Gentiles. We're all wrapped up in this thing together. So to hear from him, it's different words I use to describe this annual process. So very simply, here it is. Here's the meat, how to get started. Here are a few steps to take to following God's calendar. 1, add this calendar to your phone and to your home, wherever you look to orient yourself with what is today. So you can add that to your phone, go to your if you have an iPhone, this is how I know, you Google it. iPhone, you go to settings, you go to calendar, and then you simply will go to alternate calendars and turn on the Hebrew calendar. And then you're gonna see it pop up on your lock screen. It's awesome. Every day I know exactly where I am in the Gregorian calendar, which is like January through December, and where I am in the Hebrew calendar. It really helps me stay oriented. And then you can also purchase a physical calendar. I love having that. I love seeing that. And Kurt Landry Ministries has a great one. I've got a couple linked in the description below. All the links you need are in the Substack posts. So if you get my Substack posts every month, then you can just find it all there. Otherwise, it's in the description as well, so you can easily get to it. So once you know what day it is, you can gain a sense of where you are in the month. It's that simple. I've also made a habit of writing my Gregorian calendar dates alongside my Hebrew dates whenever I'm journaling things out, because I'll look back and say, oh, it makes so much sense. The Lord was bringing me this revelation, and this is what I know about that Hebrew month. So it makes total sense that I was getting revelation over this issue in that month. Super helpful. So now that you know what day it is and what month it is, you need to understand what the month is about. This is where things kind of expand. And I want you to know that if you feel overwhelmed by everything, I don't think we can capture like one thing. And every single month, really just simplify. You don't have to grab hold of the revelation. on all these different issues, but there's so much to glean. Maybe just one thing will stand out to you every month, and it will bring you a sense of, oh, I did hear the Lord over that, or he's wanting to say this to me over this one issue. And like 9 out of 10 things won't make sense and maybe won't land. You'll get them in another year. Maybe God will speak to you through those elements of understanding the month, but just keep it simple. Take 1 month at a time. I have been doing this since 2020, and it's taken me years of going through the annual cycle to even really get, what is this month about? I don't really understand. Oh, okay, it's about light in the darkness or whatever. It gets richer and richer every time I go through it. I'll remember what happened last year. I'll understand what the Lord is saying to me for now, and it just builds upon itself like that. So to understand what the month is about, of course, subscribe to my Substack, watch these videos. I'm putting out a new video every single month to really break down the revelation. And I'll actually show you exactly how I do that in just a minute, because you can do this for yourself if you know how to study the Word, if you know how to Google things, if you know how to hear the Lord in it. Really, I want to encourage you to be plugged into prophetic resources that you trust, that will take you back to the Bible, but yet will also incorporate the supernatural, because we have a supernatural part and we have a natural part. And the Lord wants to speak to us through both. He will speak through biblical history, through revelation, through things he said to his people throughout the generations. He will do it for a word for you now. You can look out in the garden and it can help you stay in time with God. You can get revelation from each season. What does the garden look like? What's happening in the garden? So Chuck Pierce and Robert Heidler are the main teachers and apostolic leaders at Glory of Zion Church. I trust their teachings. I have a lot of faith in them. I have listened to them for many, many years now. And they wrote this amazing book called A Time to Advance. It's one of the only resources I've found that really breaks down what is this Hebrew month about in a simple and prophetic way of, okay, well, that's great. That's what happened, thousands of years ago to God's people in the Old Testament. And I love that. It's in the Bible. It's obviously important. But what does that mean for me personally this month where I'm at? God always wants to meet you where you are at. So they really do that well in that book. Chuck, I conveniently have it here. Chuck also wrote a book called First Fruits. And in the back, he's got an index that's even a more simplified, updated thing that you can just pull open every month and be like, what are some of the key takeaways that the Lord wants to direct my attention to this month? What does he want to say to me over? Maybe it'll confirm something he's already been speaking to you. And that confirmation will almost take knowledge you're receiving, and the moment that it becomes revelation and it just sends you up, with total understanding and breakthrough. That happens to me over something every month. You can subscribe to the Substack for monthly emails, get the YouTube videos, and then Chuck's books, but also Kurt Landry has an amazing YouTube channel and blog here. His daughter just kind of broke away and is starting to have her own videos on her channel, and she brings so much awesome beauty and revelation through her breakdown of every single Hebrew month. So I've got links to their channels, also to Christine Bales. I don't know. She's awesome. Watch her on YouTube. And then Wellspring Israel. This is a couple that I found, and they're doing videos about the Hebrew months on YouTube. So I just want to send you to other resources. Sometimes you can just hear something when one person says it and you couldn't hear it when another person said it. I know this because over the years I've had different CrossFit coaches. I know this is sometimes I can understand things when you put it in gym speak, and I'll hear one coach helping me with a thing that I can't get. I just can't understand this movement. It just isn't clicking. And then I'll have another coach say something and boom, it just clicks. And something about whether their personality or the way they said it or exactly the phrase, it helped me get that revelation that I needed to get my breakthrough. So this is what following different people can do for you. It may be the same information, but I promise you, when you hear it multiple ways, you will come into a revelation of something new every single month. Tenacity. Okay, those are all of my important points for where you can glean information next. There are, of course, many resources and books from which you can learn about God's calendar and his appointed biblical celebrations. And you can easily get overwhelmed by all this information, as I've said, especially once you start scrolling through websites like hebcal.com and Shabbat. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much. These are all great places to glean from. However, the way that I learned was 1 month at a time, and I just got a little bit of an understanding, and then I was able to move to the next month, and then the next month, and then all of a sudden I've gone through a whole year, and now I'm at that month again and again. So please do not feel like you have to grab hold of everything at once. There is something the Lord has for you that will create this narrow place you've been in breakthrough. So just ask him, what's one thing this month that you are trying to say to me, Lord? Help me hear it. Part of processing each new month relies on understanding the 12 tribes of Israel. For example, in this past month, I think I wrote this a month ago, in this past month of Tevet, which took us from 2025 into 2026. Okay, yeah, I wrote this last month. That's linked with the tribe of Dan and the alphabet letter Ayin. We can glean from the connection of Dan and Judah that praise should lead us into this new year, even as God is forming a rear guard over our last year. We can also meditate on hearing God or how we're distracted. We can hear one word from God and take out our enemy by simply striking his horse's heel. So this prophetic understanding is drawn from historical understanding, yet God is saying something to us specifically about this year in it. And how we shift in Tevet produces a pathway for us to be positioned properly for the entire year. So every month there is a tribe, there's a constellation, there's a color or a stone, a Hebrew letter, and numbers that are associated with that month, as well as Jewish celebrations. And they actually do have something to do with us, even as Gentiles, because we are folded into Christ and into his victories. So all of this just adds to the rich insight over what the Lord is saying in each month. And you will find that in the months, there's a characteristic about that month sometimes. And there's like a running theme. You'll find something true of your own life experiences over that entire month. And it confirms what God is already saying to you. But at the same time, it sharpens your awareness of how he wants to move and what you need to pay attention to. You can also simply go outside your garden, like I said, and see how God is working in the earth. That kind of tells you what he wants to do in you as well. So there's a couple of things I want to go over. I think the thing that you probably want the most, I know that I'm losing people every couple minutes, this video. What information I think is probably most relevant to you is what is she even looking at to get an understanding of the month? After listening and gleaning from other sources for 6 years, since 2020. And then finally myself teaching on the months for at least 6 months now. I've been putting out videos and posts. I just now have begun to actually pull apart the individual things that make up that month. So what are we looking at? Where am I going to look for information? And I don't want to, a little bit, I've just kind of shared what other people are teaching because that's all I've known is how to grab hold of what they're teaching, kind of break it down and then share with you through the grid of how I'm getting revelation. But when you want to look at each month, here are all the parts that make up the Hebrew month. I feel like I've kind of hacked the equation, but yet it's not an equation because you can't just do it mindlessly. God is speaking a fresh word, so you have to know what are different prophetic sources saying. What is the common theme I'm hearing? What are the words coming forth? How do they all converge? Plus what I know biblically is this month is about. So it's those two things combined that make this so rich. You've got the history and you've got the fresh word. So when you're looking at just simply gleaning information for understanding, here's some different things. So I always have a monthly overview. I've got the general dates, like for example, we're going to start Adar pretty soon, and that always takes you from February to March. But this year it's got specific dates. I think it's the 17th or 18th of February into the 18th of March. So then you know exactly when it begins and ends. You've got the alphabet, which there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and each one has a picture, it has a symbol. And so, oh gosh, these are the main gists. The alphabet, there's a tribe. What number month is it? Like, is it the 3rd month? Is it the 12th month of the year? That has meaning in it. There's a constellation. And then there's usually a celebration, a biblical celebration that's super important in that month. And then you can always look to the garden. So when we're talking about the alphabet, I guess I'm getting a little in the weeds here, but it's such rich understanding. And this is kind of I'm going to call it the formula, for lack of better words right now. So when you're looking at that alphabet letter, what letter is associated with, for example, right now we're in Shavat. What letter is associated with Shavat? Now, when we look at that alphabet letter, originally there was a picture that was drawn. It's like, pictograph, I guess is the right word. There's a picture associated with that original Hebrew letter drawing. So the picture has meaning. There are verses associated with this letter and this symbol. It's a word. There's like a Hebrew word and it means something, and it's in the Bible, different places. You can look that up. Where does it mention this specific root word? And then you also have, still underneath that grid of the alphabet, there is an ordered number in the alphabet. So is it the first letter of the alphabet? Is it the 22nd letter of the alphabet, for example? Because, for example, Sadiq, this one for the current month we're in, is the 18th letter in the alphabet, yet there's a number associated with that alphabet. So it's not just 18, even though it's the 18th number, it's the 18th letter of the alphabet. The number 90 is associated with that. So I'm not 100% sure why that is, but I just know that if you look up that information, you can find it, and then you can say, okay, so in this month, the number 18 and the number 90 are important numbers to biblically, spiritually understand those numbers. Fine resources for understanding numbers. Troy Brewer has an amazing book called Numbers That Preach. He has short snippets, clips on his YouTube channel for every single number. There's a ton. Look up Troy Brewer. If you wake up every day at 2:22 in the morning, like look up 222 or whatever. He's got such great insight. He also, anyways, I don't want to get deeper into the weeds. That's enough. There's always a tribe associated with every single month. There's 12 tribes of Israel. There are 12 months in a year. So Genesis 49 you can look at, because that is the original promise over that tribe that was given by Jacob or by Israel. And then you've got Deuteronomy 33, where there is a blessing given over every tribe, and this blessing is given by Moses. So you can look at, what did Jacob say? What did Moses say? What was the promise for that tribe, for that nation? You can look up the history of that tribe in the Old Testament. What is talked about them? How did they interact? Did they have faith in God? Did they move when the Lord said to move? Were they able to go into the promised land? Because some tribes settled outside of God's promised land, and that meant a whole thing for them versus the tribes who went into the promised land. There were some that answered the call to war and some who did not. So there's all this rich history that gives us either maybe a warning in each month, or it just helps us be aware of snares, or it helps us have faith to move in a certain way. And then, is there any significance of the geographic location of that tribe? You can look up the history of the geography with the original Hebrew tribes. Let's see, the current history or the relevancy of what has happened with that tribe. There's a lot of prophecy about Ephraim and Manasseh, and bringing in like the offshoots or the broken parts of the tribe, bringing them back into the fold of the promise, stuff like that. I know it's even talked about in Revelation. So then there's the position of the tribe within the temple as well. Just all these different things you could really dive into. You can make it super deep, but you can also just grab hold of that top layer again, and the Lord will speak to you through that, whatever your capacity is. And then there is the calendar position. What month is it from the head of the year? So the head of the year is in the fall. And I'm like, how do I describe this very simply? In the fall is the start of a new year biblically. That's when everything initiates, yet it's the 7th month. And so if you just look from when the first month is number 1, the Bible just says this is to be the start of a new year at this time. Yet the months are numbered a little bit differently. So Nisan is month number 1. But from there, that's how we get through. I think that the way I've seen it described online is that there is like a religious number. This is, if you're based off religion versus just what the culture nowadays goes off of, whether it's how many months are we from that head of the year in the fall, or how many months are we from Nisan, which is technically number 1 on the calendar, which is like the start of the year. And so what month is it from the start of the year? What month is it from the head of the year? We haven't even reached Nisan. That'll be next month or the month after, because we're in the 11th month right now. Try not to get too confusing because this does get really deep. We'll be moving into the 12th month of Adar between February and March. And then we will enter Nisan, which is month number 1. Yet that's not the start of this whole new process, because that will be in the fall. So just leave that what it is. As you continue to follow with each month, this will break down and you'll understand a little bit more. To move on, 3 last things. There's a constellation. There's a Bible verse associated with that symbol. For example, John 4:13 through 14 is associated with the water bearer of Aquarius, which is what we focused on in this month's Shabbat video. So you can see what issues over water, over drinking, over being filled, over, drinking from a cup and water of the Spirit that you'll never get thirsty from again. He has this encounter with the woman at the well. You always want to take it and not look into astrology, but you want to take that to the Bible. But God created the heavens. He created movement in the heavens, the stars, the planets. And so he's in that. You can go New Age with it, or you can just take that top portion and say, all right, this is the constellation associated with this time. What does Scripture say about that? And that's where you take it. It's kind of like a safe zone. And then there's always an important celebration or date, except for 1 month out of the whole year. So for example, next month, it's going to be Purim. That has so much richness in it, and it actually directs the entire month. So understanding Purim, what that has to do with me as a Christian, is amazing, so enriching. And then you can always look to the garden as well. What is happening out in nature? Right now, God's been speaking to me a lot about cover cropping and all these things I know I need to do once I actually get a piece of land. And I know this is like a lot, but I want to start my flower farm. I love gardening. It's so enriching to be outside, to be growing beautiful things, to be a part of this process with my hands, to be connected to the earth. I just feel the Lord in that. And so I've been stressed out like, oh my gosh, we have to get land. We have to do it now. I know the Lord said I need to wait. There's a perfect time, but I just need it now because I need to go through this whole process. I need to be able to cover crop and do all this and no-till for a whole season before I'm even ready to grow. And the Lord said, I'm talking to you right now about the land of your heart. Cover cropping, growing something in this season that is meant to enrich the soil so it will be ready for the great harvest to come. It's all about what's in your heart. So you can look at something and it can be in front of your face, very practical, very natural, and you have to be able to see into that. What are you saying, Lord, over this thing? Cover cropping, seeds being sown. I'm starting new seeds right now for the spring. They're cool weather flowers. They need to begin now. So there's a whole bit in that. I can look at that and say, okay, Lord, what are we working on right now? How does the soil of my heart need to be amended to be ready for growing in another month or 2 or 3 months? What can we do now in this winter season to acknowledge the quietness, the stillness, the reflectiveness? What needs to be strengthened or prepared so that when all the energy and time comes to plant, what strategies need to be in place so that I know where things are going, when to plant out, when to start the seeds inside. All of those things can be very spiritual things and just help keep you in time. Even if you don't know anything else, all you know is how to get outside and get your hands in the dirt and do things for a garden. The Lord can speak to you through that. He can build your faith through that. So those are all the elements of each month. And if you're still with me, God bless you. You're a trooper. I'm going to go through a couple more things I've written. All of this is just bonus and will just really enrich you for the importance of this whole process. Chuck's preface in A Time to Advance. Here's some of the chapters that he has. I think just seeing the chapter names kind of tell you about what this whole thing is about. Thinking like a Hebrew, the power of blessing, God's cycle of blessing, and God's yearly cycle of life. The blessings of first fruits. We've got to understand Rosh Chodesh. I'm trying to get myself to understand Rosh Chodesh right now. How do I live from a mindset of giving to him first? There's a first fruits of every day. There's a first fruits of the month. The next chapter is the importance of God's calendar today, advancing from blessing to blessing, connecting to God's life cycle, unlocking your prophetic destiny, God's plan for redemption, warring for your inheritance, and understanding the Hebrew tribes and the months. So I'm actually pulling this next two paragraphs from the book because I think everybody needs to hear this. In times such as these, the body of Christ must listen for God's prophetic voice and come into alignment with his purposes and timing. The battles are more intense than ever, and understanding divine alignment and positioning in God's kingdom plan is critical. The best way to live victoriously in the midst of warfare is to think like God thinks, hebraically, and consider the model that he gave us in his word relating to alignment of the 12 tribes of Israel and their connection with the 12 months of the Hebraic calendar. God's battle plan has not changed over the centuries. We are entering into a time of intense war. To be positioned right, we can look at time and the concept of how God established the tribes in order to come into an understanding of the fullness of how God operates. The issue really comes down to us moving into a realm of greater revelation of the word and entering into freedom in a whole new way. As you consider how to move forward and commence looking at the tribes and understanding God's timing, you're going to see that God has a redemptive plan for you. In the midst of this time, he is creating a new level of wholeness in you. And when he speaks to you, faith will arise. And as believers, we're grafted into God's covenant plan with Abraham through Christ. So understanding the prophetic significance and characteristics of the tribes of Israel is vital for us gaining insight into prophetic fulfillment for our role in our territory. Studying the Hebrew months helps us receive prophetic understanding on how the Lord orders our steps throughout the year. And what is the Rosh Chodesh blessing? Why do we celebrate first fruits? Moving from one covenant to the next is key to continuing to walk in blessings. Since each month is designed by the Lord to release a blessing into your life, you will learn how to progress from blessing to blessing all year. The book goes on to describe the three mindsets that exist in the world, which are barbaric, Greek, and Hebraic. This is, when I say Hebraic, I mean biblical. You do not have to be Jewish to have a Hebraic mindset. This is about learning to think the way that God thinks. And we can learn how to do this by reading his word. His ways are higher than our ways, Isaiah 55, which is why it takes faith to walk in the way that God tells us to go. But by following the biblical calendar and reading God's word and obeying whatever he tells you to do, we can become transformed. And little by little, or sometimes leap by leap, we can begin to think like him. We were made with the capabilities. Genesis 1 says that. And we have this Hebraic mindset in us. I'm only grabbing small bits to share from Chuck and Robert's book, so I recommend buying and reading this book. I got it on my Kindle app on my phone so I could just reference it every month. What's going on this month? But the first few chapters bring such rich revelation on why and how to follow the biblical calendar. I've kind of described that to you here, my own experience with that, and I'll just end with that. I bless you. I hope that this brings not only helpful practical tips for how to get started, but insight into what is in each month for you. And honestly, I mean, it can seem like this whole big fancy thing, but I hope that I've kind of broken it down enough for you to just be like, this is for me, wherever I'm at. And the Lord has something to say to me. And he does have something to say to you. You can hear the Lord if you have his spirit inside of you. And if you're a Christian, then you do that. And so it's just a process. Don't think that you have to have all this stuff figured out. It's been a process for me. And every month I'm just, okay, Lord, what are we working on this month? But it is a blessing to follow his calendar. And I just want to share that blessing with you. So, shalom, shalom.